Is the market crashing? Is it now a buyer's market? And where have all the buyers gone anyway? These are all things that we were hearing out there from people, news media organizations, and heck, even other content creators out there in the vast world wide web, like YouTube. If you're thinking of selling or even buying, the market today is vastly different than it was 6 months ago. So today, I'm going to give you some facts and information that you can actually take with you so that you can actually understand a little bit more about what's actually happening in the market. Stay tuned. Okay, so buying a house and home ownership in general is a really very emotional topic that gets the best of people. And as such, the news media likes to lean into that to get as much engagement as they can. And it's also such a large part of the economy that when the news starts talking about housing and the real estate market, people usually listen. And in some cases, they can get caught up in the emotional side of it. So let's really talk about some facts that you can arm yourself with that'll give you a much clearer picture of what's really going on out there in the market. So the first thing that most people are unaware of, unless of course you're in the market and looking for a house as a buyer, is that mortgage rates have actually shot up a ton. Not the Fed rate, but actual mortgage interest rates, because those are different, has actually shot up a ton since the beginning of the year. And that is really what has caused the slowdown. Buyers who were looking in the low 3s before in January are now looking in the high 5s and even into the 6% range, which has really affected a lot of buyers' affordability. But let's put interest rates into perspective for a second, because mortgages in the 2 and 3% range are an absolute anomaly. Have never happened before in history. Just 4 years ago, the average interest rate for 2018 was 4.5. For the whole year, the average interest rate was 4.5. And let's face it, that was really the last normal year that we have on record. And since about the year 2000, which doesn't really feel that long ago to me, feels like yesterday, rates have been bouncing from about 8% down to about 4%. So high 5s, even low 6s, which is what we're seeing right now, is really in the middle of that range and is actually really average for the last 20 years. And even though the rates have turned more normal, people have short memories. And the idea of not having that 3% interest rate has really pushed a lot of them up onto that fence where they're just sitting and they're just waiting. But still, there are others that are concerned that the market is pulling back. In fact, there was a news article recently, just a few days ago, that came out from a local news source talking about how the Bend market has pulled back and prices have dropped $45,000 in a single month. That's about a 5.8% decrease in sales price. And while that may technically be true, that is a median price. In fact, the average sales price over the same period, over just the last month, has really only dropped in Bend $2,000, which is a massive drop from a median price of $45,000 down to an average decrease of only $2,000 down. Now, will this decrease continue? Who knows? If we can get this inflation under control, that'll be a great first step. But still, what does this tell us? Well, it indicates to us that more homes are selling at a lower price range, below the median price, which pulls everything down. But conversely, there are still some luxury homes, high-end luxury homes that are well above the median price that are still selling, that are keeping the average intact or very close to the same amount. Now, this is consistent with what we've seen, because now that the market has pulled back a little bit, we've seen a resurgence of buyers into that lower price range and the upper luxury price ranges, because they typically have more cash on hand and rely less and less on financing. So the increased interest rates don't really apply to them. However, the overall notion that prices are falling aren't really supported here, because prices aren't necessarily increasing like they used to, but they're also not necessarily falling. Prices are relatively holding steady. And the question is that going to continue? But we are seeing price reductions, and that's the third thing that the media keeps hyping up, are all the price reductions that we've seen. But the truth is, as we just discussed, all these price reductions are not necessarily lowering the overall sales price that much. Now, before, we were seeing crazy price increases, month over month. Now we are basically just holding steady, which is much better for sellers than declining prices, which is what everyone thinks is actually happening. So that's good news for sellers, right? Well, yes, for most sellers. What is important though is that you have to be realistic about what you're actually selling. 6 months ago, you could ask whatever you wanted for your house, but really, any house. I mean, we saw some really rough homes in tough neighborhoods with astronomical prices compared to the comps, but that was simply a result of insane demand. Today, we actually have to do the work of real estate agents in actually comping out homes and comparing them to other homes. And just because they're in the same neighborhood doesn't mean that they should sell for the exact same price. What if one needs to be updated? Or what if one needs significant work done on it? What if one smells of smoke? Or what if one's backed up to a major busy street without a yard? Those things almost didn't matter before. Whereas today, because we finally have some inventory to look at, buyers can afford to be pickier, and those homes are getting passed by these, pickier buyers, which is forcing those homes to go through significant price reductions. I'll tell you from experience, and I've seen it in this market just in the last few months, there are still homes out there that are selling with multiple offers on the table. Because, as we all know, the cream rises to the top. Now, one of the last things I do want to bring up is the inventory. And yes, inventory has increased a bunch over the last 6 months. But think about it. Interest rates put a full stop on tons and tons of buyers out there. So of course inventory shot up. Interest rates don't put a pause on listing a house. They just put a pause on buyers. And so still, really, if you look at the data, we're still lower than we were back in 2018. Which I'm kind of using as a baseline here. September of 2018, there were 3 months of inventory on the market sitting. And that was a very robust market overall. Right now, we're sitting at 2 months of inventory, which, if you're doing the math, that's a 33% decrease in the amount of homes that are for sale. And furthermore, what's even more interesting is that year over year, this year versus last year, we are actually down in total units sold in Bend by 13%. And then one more fun stat for you. Here's the kicker. Since January, regardless of what the median has said, the slight decrease in prices, we are still up 12% since January in average sales price here in Bend. So is the market crashing? And if not, if you're reading between the lines here, how can buyers and sellers take advantage of this market right now? Well, for starters, buyers can finally afford to take a little bit of time when they're looking to buy a house. There's now time to do some due diligence, maybe be a little bit more selective, and even come in a little bit lower on the offering price. Even builders, new construction builders, have brought back incentives. I've heard recently about a $20,000 incentive to buy a new construction home if you talk to Polish Homes. Sellers can take comfort in knowing that they haven't lost all of the value that they thought they had gained over the last couple of years. Some properties in some locations and some pockets may have backed down a little bit, but is it a pullback or is it just returning to a more normal market? And remember, you can still get multiple offers in a normal market. It used to happen all the time, if you picked the right agent, of course. Speaking of that, what a great segue! If you were thinking of buying or selling here in Central Oregon, my team and I would love to be your resource of choice. Feel free to reach out via email or a phone call or reach out to us on Instagram. We would love to connect. Thanks again for watching this really long, boring market update, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.